this was the number one lesson. So as I got older, I started working on that self-development and that personal development and the psychology and these things, and realizing that whatever we focus on is what we create.
I have known Nathan for, how long have we known each other? Probably 5-6 years, something like that.
I was going to say, yeah.
MIC, something like that. Somewhere.
Yeah, and probably even before that, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, we've known each other for a while. Real estate investor, father. I can't wait to kind of dig in a little bit more. We were chatting on the call before this for way too long because I was like, man, all of this stuff would be great for the podcast. So I'm going to shut up and we're going to record. And we have Rourke that has already joined us for the call. Usually somebody will come in midway, but I already have him. So Nathan, for those folks who are listening who don't know who you are, go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us about your family and your businesses.
Absolutely. Yes. And thank you again for having me on. And I love the concept of this podcast. So I think it's amazing. And so thank you again for having me on. So I'm a real estate investor, but I spent my formative years from fifth grade on learning musical instruments. And I actually played music professionally for more than a decade in my 20s and 30s, and conducted choirs all over the country, played in front of thousands of people, had a song on the radio, played in studios, and to this day I have a huge love and passion for music. And I live in outside of Kansas City, and I have a couple different real estate related businesses. I have a coaching company, Real Estate Accelerator. We help people get their first rental property and actually teach those nuts and bolts of how to do that. And then we also have our own, I have a couple different ones. So we have an Airbnb holding company. We have a long-term rental holding company. And then we have a development company that we build a bunch of stuff, both horizontal, like take raw ground and make into lots, as well as new construction and vertical. So I've done about, a little over 1,000 fix and flips and new construction builds in my career. And so that's the real estate side.
Man, that's awesome. Yeah, that's watching you on social and all the different flips you're doing, all the constant moving you're doing, all the you've been crushing it. It's been really fun to watch, and I wish that we would. I mean, it's an opportunity right now, but get to know each other a little bit more on a different level. Because just watching you from social media side, it's been great. And then obviously working with you guys a little bit with ADPI and all that, it's been awesome to watch. But I want to you mentioned your childhood a little bit. Let's dig into that a little bit more. Can you tell me about like your dad and what it was like growing up, and tell me, what it was like with Nathan growing up as a kiddo about this age?
Oh man. Well, it's funny. My dad and I, if you would have asked me when I was 16 or 18 or probably even, in my early 20s, didn't have a great relationship. And it was one of those situations where, it was 18 and I was ready to get the hell out of the house and not be there and not living there. And both my parents worked at a hospital for 30 plus years. My mom a nurse and my dad a chaplain. And I think that he had gave, so much of himself in that role at his work that he had very little at home. And, it's not that they weren't amazing parents and a great dad and, or people who loved you, but it wasn't necessarily the same experience of what you wanted, what I was wanting to experience. And I would say over the last 4, 5, 6 years, I'm not sure exactly timeline wise, we've really had a renaissance in our relationship and spending more time, and also just seeing him have more joy in his life. And he's been somebody that's, battled some depression and those kind of things. And it runs in my family. It's not something, thankfully, I deal with a lot. But it's definitely something that I have observed a lot. And so, yeah, and then I guess the flip side of that is, as a child, I can only imagine what a giant pain that I was. I was firstborn, and I've always marched to my own drum, and I've always, wanted to create things and do things and forge my own path. And so, I wasn't an insane child, like doing a bunch of crazy things, although I have, plenty of stories to that too. I think it was more of my desire to be in control of my destiny that caused the friction, as well as my propensity for adventure and my dad's aversion to maybe the riskier sides of things. So, but he is the first time I ever traveled out of the country was with my dad. So I have a brother and sister, and I went to Venezuela when I was in, 7th grade, 8th grade with him, and had a lifelong passion for travel. And my parents literally just got back from a 2-week trip overseas and doing amazing stuff. Not like overseas like you guys did all the time. The fun kind where you drink wine on a cruise and go shopping and visit amazing places. So I'll pause now, and I'm sure there's follow-up questions to that. Oh, baby too. Now I can't hear you. You're muted.
That was awesome of me to mute myself right when I'm trying to tell you stuff, right? Everybody's got to do the cameo. We've got the au pair jumping in. We've got Adam jumping in. There we go. The whole crew. Say hi. Now, anybody who can't see any of this totally needs to go to YouTube to see it all, because now we got the whole crew crowding in behind me. But
yeah, you got a full party.
All right. Okay, get out of here, everybody. Go away. All right.
That means you too.
No, you gonna chill with me, Rourke? All right. You gotta let Daddy talk, though. Okay. All right. So, like I warned you, everybody's gonna have to show up. This is just what happens when I'm recording.
Hey,
it's part of being a dad at home, right? I truly enjoy it. So,
good.
So there's a couple things that I want to tear apart there. One, you and I have very similar thought. Like the last 4 to 6 years have been life changing for me and my dad as well. Just like, my understanding of where he came from and how we're able to talk. And I've never seen my dad since he's retired so relaxed and have such a joy about him. I've never seen that in my dad, right? So my dad spent a lot of time in prison, as he likes to tell people, right? So he was a correction officer for 26 years. Okay. So he was on the correct side of the bars, right? But every time, like I go hang out with him in his neighborhood, and he's in a retirement community with a bunch of other people on a golf course, right? So he'll be walking around and he's like, yeah, I'm living the dream after 26 years in prison. This is great to be able to. And then like he loves just to watch people's face, and then he's like, I was in prison. Like it's just like that's like I've heard it like 5 or 6 times now when I go and visit and I'm playing golf. It's just all right, Dad. Yep, God. I get it. But now he's living his absolute dream. Like he loves it. So he's golfing 5 days a week. And amazing. I've never seen him happier. And I've learned more about his history as I've grown up. That has really helped me understand kind of who he is. But I always felt that same thing. Like he's given so much at work that he doesn't have much left when he comes home. And the only thing that was left when he came home. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. You're about to say something.
What changed? What changed for you guys in your relationship over that 5-year window, the last 5 years? How did that change?
I think it was me more than anything. Like he's changed in so much that he's no longer dealing with the prison stuff, right? So that has helped him. But I changed in understanding, like letting go of a lot of the stuff that I was holding on to for years, because I learned more about who my dad is, right? And it helped me cope with and understand what I felt like I was missing when I was a child. Like it was like, wow, like it's not that I was it's more that he didn't have it to give than it was that I wasn't receiving it. So it's hard to get something from somebody if they don't have it to give, right? So it was something that I was able to kind of cope with later on, to realize, all right, you self-centered child, like, realize that your dad's been through a lot in his life. He's gone through a lot of different things and different struggles that you've thank God have never had to experience. So that allowed me an opening to build the stronger relationship than I ever had with him, and to really understand who he is. So,
it's interesting to me. Over the last few years, I've worked a lot on trauma stuff, and I think, the realization that every kid, and by the way, I was bullied mercilessly from basically like middle school or even late elementary school, even all the way through high school, which was part of the reason I really forged into martial arts over the last 4 or 5 years as well. It's funny how I keep saying 4 or 5 years, but well, it is what it is. But it's interesting when I think about that, and you start to look at what that trauma loop is, and you do some psychology work, you do some self-development work, and realize that every single person has things that are formulated when you're 6, 7, 8 years old, and and then the realization, and I even coach my team on this too, by the way, Adam, and I literally say, like, well, in a very loving way, if it comes up, but it's like, hey, is this the adult Nathan talking, or is this the 6, 8-year-old Nathan talking? And when we can start to recognize when that shows up, and like, oh, I'm needing some attention right now, but I'm not really consciously like recognizing what's happening.
Yeah, there's a guy, Dr. Kelly Flanagan. He wrote a book similar to that talks about this, right? Like every time that we're getting angry at ourselves, and I'm going to butcher kind of what he's talking about, but we're really reverting back to our inner child, right? What happened to us when we're as an inner child, right? And it's not to go too down to to the quote unquote psychobabble type of nonsense, right? But it does happen that way, right? Where if we really start to break it down, something happened at some point that has caused us to think the way we think, to act the way we act, respond the way we respond. And oftentimes it's, like you were saying, starting at 6 or 7 years old, we're developing a lot of those, those habits of those things that are triggering my brain. We were talking about, my oldest with some of the schoolwork, right? So that's going to be something that I'm going to have to break so that it doesn't haunt him later on in life with the perfectionism or something along those lines. So, I want to go 100 different directions on this, but let's say with your kids are like, I don't know if it's too much time. I don't know if there is a way to spend too much time on it, but do you think about the way that you're raising your kids right now so that you're not causing some of those problems later on, or how are you kind of showing up for the kids to, or thinking about it so that you're like, man, I don't want 25-year-old Colin to have to deal with the way that I acted right now with 12-year-old Colin?
Oh man, I think about it regularly. And have you read David Goggins' latest book?
Yes.
He talks about at one point in there, and for people who don't know who he is, he's former special forces guy and was 300 pounds on a couch and saw a commercial for Navy SEALs and went into a recruiter and said, I'm going to figure this out. Hadn't graduated high school without cheating. And his story is pretty incredible. He also has the most potty mouth of any potty mouth person I've ever heard before. So if you don't know who he is, forewarned. But he says in the book that I'm going to deal with the trauma for both me and my dad. And when I think about that, it's like, I have to start with me. I have to start with both the adult Nathan and the child Nathan, and then figure out like, okay, how am I making myself better? And so I've really had to start first with a frustration of seeing things that pop up with the kids do, or blame it on my wife or blame it on somebody else, and then realize like, hold on a second, dude, like, what are you doing to make sure that you are showing up the most healthy way? And to your actual question, which was, I think no matter what we do, Adam, our kids are going to have something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it matters. So it's like butterfly effect. Like you change one thing and have another thing. And so instead, what I've tried to figure out and be more present to is blank, blank, blank happened. Now what? Like, so let's do a better job of the other side of the problem versus the front side of the problem. So giving tools to how do we process frustration? How do we process fear? How do we process something that's hard? How do we process going in and having a positive mindset? So that's more what I've really, at least into the today version of me, that's the thing I think about the most.
In the today version of me, tell me what that means.
Well, I think the 5 year ago Nathan, or the 10 years ago Nathan, 20 years ago Nathan, that I think they're all different. And so what I believe to be the most true and the most helpful things, I try to be, one of the things I love about Joe Rogan is that he has a bigger audience than any like news program or, all news programs in the is certainly in the United States. I don't know, internationally. And he's willing to just be wrong. And I want to be willing to be wrong. And the version of Nathan today is the person who is learning to understand and listen faster and be more patient. And so that's what I mean by it. And, the Nathan of 5 years from now, by the way, I never talk about myself in the third person, but, me in 5 years, I hope to be a much better person, a much more understanding person, a much more, all those things, because I think stagnation is death, and I can't stand the thought of that.
I was hoping that's the route you were going, is that because like to me, every day that we're moving, the same thing I tell my kids, like 1% better every day, right? If I'm trying to be 1% better, I'm going to be, and in 7 years, you're literally a completely different person. All of your cells have all redone, everything. You're quite literally physically a different person, right? So
100%.
If I'm physically a different person, why can't I mentally be a different person? Why can't I adjust the way I'm thinking about things in those 7 years, so that I can show up better for my family, show up better for my my job, show up better for my church, show up better for everything, right? I be a better person? 2 years ago, Adam, to speak in the third person like you were, would have thought things differently, right? And I hope that all of us are trying to do that. And that's the same thing I try to tell the boys, because if it's the boys in particular, my job is to teach them to be better men than me. So the only way to teach them to be better men than me is to model how to become a better man. So if I'm sitting here stagnant, then I'm not modeling how to be a better man. I'm showing them how to be a stagnant dude. And that's not helpful, right? That's the opposite of helpful. So I love that. Go ahead.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're good.
I was just going to say I love what you said too. And as far as not being a better man also means we are truthful and honest and take ownership when we screw stuff up too. And that's one of those places where it's been a growth edge for me, which means my son's name is Colin. Hey Colin, I'm sorry for getting upset. It was an appropriate response, and I was frustrated in the moment, but it didn't matter because that wasn't the way to respond. So I'm sorry for doing that. I'm sorry, but you're being a real pain. We can talk about the thing that maybe needs to be changed, but also like how do we as people do a better job? Yeah,
for sure. That jumps into right what I was thinking. Like you had the blank 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 happen. Now what? Right? And I just literally had a conversation like that with the boys yesterday. 2 days ago, I don't remember what it was. I had a not so great day. It wasn't the kids' fault at all. I was meeting to meeting, and not all of them went the way I wanted them to go, and everything. Like it was a not so great day. I was mentally exhausted. So we were like, okay. And then the boys were doing something. They were being boys, having a great time in their room. When they were supposed to be going to bed, they were supposed to be sleeping, but they were having a great time in their room. And I walked in and I was like, enough. And I was angry. I was not in the right spot. And then I sat there for a second, and I sat in the room, and I kind of looked around, and I went up to him, and I tucked him in. And I said, "Boys, that was not about you guys. That was Dad not showing up properly. Like, I am very sorry that I reacted to you guys the way I did." And like, well, it felt like it was. I said, I know it did, and that's why I'm apologizing. I know it felt like for you guys that Dad was just so angry at you guys, and that wasn't the case. Like, I wanted some quiet. I wanted them to listen. I wanted but what I didn't want was to ruin my two kids from being able to have fun. Like, they're still boys. They're still young. They still want to have fun. And it was, man, and that's something that I've been really trying hard to do is that, okay, this happened. Now, how do I make sure that they know that I showed up incorrectly? Hey, buddy, I'm talking about you right now. Does that mean you have to leave? Come here. I'm talking about how I had to apologize to you the other night because I got upset with you and your brother. You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How'd it make you feel?
Didn't feel good.
Didn't feel good? Mm-hmm. When I yelled or when I apologized?
You yelled.
Okay, yeah. How about when I apologized? Did I do okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Daddy needs to show up a little better sometimes.
I'm going to say that Flash keeps chewing on the shoe, and I've done the high. And I've done the high and tapped his nose at the same time and said no at the same time. And he keeps chewing on the shoe.
All right, well, we're going to have to train the doggy after I'm done recording. How's that sound? I'll help after we're done recording, buddy. This is the joys of having a puppy at the house too.
I couldn't hear what he said, but I could hear your reactions.
Yeah, I wish I should have put the microphone close to him, but yeah, he was saying that it hurt when I yelled at him, and then he was saying that it was good that I apologized, and then
I heard that part. I just couldn't hear the dog. The dog.
Oh yeah, he's a puppy, right? So it's an 8-week-old puppy we just got, and
a Belgian Malinois.
A Belgian Malinois. So very excitable dogs, want to be involved in everything, want to figure everything out, want to work really hard. So right now I got a little beeping collar so that when he's doing something wrong, I can start to work on some training stuff. And he was like, "Dad, I said no. I said no and beeped. I said no and vibrated. I said no and vibrated and tapped his nose, and he's still doing it." Oh. Well, you as 8-year-old Adam have maxed out what you're going to do. Me as the dad, I will come out after we're done recording, and we'll see if we can figure something else out. But
also as the experienced dog trainer of
exactly
what Tim Kennedy calls the fur missile of dogs.
Oh yes, they are definitely the fur missiles. Yes. Do
you follow Tim? Is that somebody you?
I have listened to him multiple times. Yeah, follow no, but definitely.
He has a adult Belgian Malinois and regularly has his dog. I forget her name, but has her on his social media, and he's always posting stuff like, "Don't you want to get her upset? Don't you want to whatever?" And then like the video of her like attacking the what do you call the
wrap? Yeah.
Is it however you train the dog?
Yeah.
Like that's those are serious dogs.
This one is adopted, or it was rescued, so I'm not allowed to do any of that type of training. I could do the normal training, obedience training, help them. Like I could do like the frisbee type stuff, where they're jumping and diving and doing all this stuff, but I can't do any attack work with them, which I don't really want to. I mean, that's I'm trying to let go of that part of my past, right? So that's one of those that I want a dog that knows how to sit, stay, heel, that type of stuff, but I don't need a dog that is a fur missile anymore.
Got it.
I don't need a dog out there finding bombs in the mountains of Afghanistan anymore. I think I'm good with that.
That's a hardcore thing.
It was honestly one of the most rewarding jobs I've ever done in my life. It was phenomenal. So
can we talk about that for a second?
Sure.
Okay, so how do you get a dog? Well, 2 questions. How do you get a dog to know how to find a bomb? First of all, and then practically, what are the steps when you show up and you get out of that Humvee? Like, so do you mind just talking through like both those things? I find them both incredibly fascinating. So
they're a lot of, and it's fun to both teach all the stuff. So when it comes to training the actual dog, right? A dog's olfactory senses are unbelievably strong. So let's start by saying that when I make you a cheeseburger, right, and I put all the fixings on it and I hand it to you, you're like, man, this cheeseburger smells amazing. When I hand that same cheeseburger to my dog says, "Man, that slice of cheese smells amazing. Those pickles smell amazing. The seeds inside that pickle smell amazing. That burger smells amazing. Ooh, did you put cumin in the burger? That's weird." And like that's the dog's senses. They break everything up into each minute piece, right? So when you're training a dog, you're training them to find those minute pieces of different explosives. So you're going to start with just the one odor. And let's picture putting 3 boxes next to each other, right? And there's a hole in each box. The dog goes in and sniffs an empty box, and then you have them sniff a box with a bomb in it. Or that odor, right? It doesn't actually have the bomb in it, but that odor that you're trying to get them to find. The second that dog's nose hits that box, it gets rewarded, whether it's with the Kong, whether it's with the treat, whatever it is that they get, right? And then you do that multiple times. So now they're associating a reward with whatever was in that box. And then you start to work on, okay, well, now they're smelling it and I need them to sit. Or now they're smelling it and then you're working on, okay, well, now they're getting this different odor or this different odor. So you're slowly bringing them into actually understanding what it is they're sniffing for. And then now it's like, okay, well, now you need to sit and you need to stare at me and we need to wait. And then I'm going to draw you off and pay you over here, because the last thing I want to do is pay you right next to a bomb and then you blow us up, right? So, so we're training them on different things in different scenarios. Now, what does that look like in real life when you're actually going out finding bombs, right? So, I've done a bunch of different things doing that, right? So it all kind of depends on the mission. We've done like massive cordon and search things in downtown Baghdad, where we just shut down an entire block and I go house to house to house and just search. We knocked on this door. Depending on what we're doing, I may have to sweep the door first. Like, okay, the dog sniffs the door. Is there a bomb? Is there a booby trap on the door? Okay, we're good. We open the door. We go in. If it's whatever it is. And then I'm going from room to room. So it also depends on the dog. Some dogs are really easy, like this one here, Carlos, that I had in Afghanistan. Unbelievable dog. Really easy. I barely have to do anything. I say the word seek and he's finding. He's just going. And he's just searching everything. I just kind of watch him, make sure he hit all the spots he needs to hit. He hit high, he hit low, he hit under the bed, he hit everywhere. His nose just goes to town searching for bombs constantly. Right. And then I get out of there, and then somebody else goes in to do whatever they do. So it all depends on the mission. But I'll pause there, answer any questions that you have on all of that. But practically speaking, that's generally how the training happens, and then what you do in real life. Okay,
yeah, that's amazing. I have a German Shorthair and have hunted him quite a bit, and so I have quite a bit of experience. Kind of on the very, very basic training, but thinking about what that would look like is fun to think about, and obviously that level of training and also the level of opportunity for chaos. If it doesn't go right, you don't have a well-trained dog, you don't have a coordinated mission, you don't have coordinated timing and pacing and the cadence of all the people in and out of those spaces. I mean, it's a real life thing. So that's amazing. Sure.
And especially when you look at it, because these dogs are also trained to attack, right? So like,
you
have you get in the middle of a tick and something goes down and gunfire's going off and a tick it's troops in contact. Sorry, throwing out acronyms, but so let's say a firefight happens, right? And all of a sudden, gunfire is happening. The dog's going nuts trying to find bombs. So now all of a sudden, the dog's going nuts because there's gunfire going on all over the place. Now we're moving from building to building, and we were out on what I like to call a camping trip. We just like 3 days in the middle of the mountains of Afghanistan, hoofing around doing stuff. It was a camping trip for me and my doggy, and my dog bit 2 people. It wasn't supposed to. Americans. Operators, and he just decided you did something you weren't supposed to. One of them was our medic, right? So Carlos was sleeping in the Humvee, and we were kind of outside waiting for something. I don't remember, but something fell on top of Carlos, and the medic was inside and pulled it off of Carlos. Carlos woke up to the medic's hand over the top and just right on top of the medic's hand. And it was like, son of a gun, So it was like, oh man. And then so he's in there, madam. So I go running in and grab the dog, and I'm like, he's like, nope, totally my fault, man. Totally my fault. Do you need me to take the little lady?
Oh my goodness.
No, I think the little baby's trying to come over. You want to come? Sure, I'll hold on to her for a little bit. Twist my arm. Come here. Hi. You get to hear Daddy's fun stories. So yeah, but the day before that, he was in the back of so the Humvees that we used were very different types of Humvees than you normally. I mean, they had no roof. That was wide open in the back. There's no front doors. I was with special operators out there doing their thing. I was not a special operator. I just got attached to them.
Okay.
And so we had different types of vehicles. And so my dog's just standing in the back, and our combat controller jumps in the back and steps on his paw and gets bit right square in the knee. I was like, son of a god. So like those types of things, when you're like, that was when there wasn't chaos happening, when we weren't in the middle of a firefight, when there wasn't bombs going on. Like, so it was like, man. And Carlos was a maniac. He was a very aggressive dog that hated everybody. So that made life very fun, except me. Yeah, and that took some work. I've got some scars on my hand from him. So
I believe it. And I also find it funny. Just every time you keep saying Carlos, I just keep picturing the baby in the carrier from Hangover. And so every time I think like, anyway, so sorry, that was a terrible. And but that's. Well, okay, so one more question then. So you're sniffing for bombs, all of a sudden a firefight erupts, then does the dog's mission change?
Yes. So to a point, right? So the dog's mission becomes secondary, right? So that's one of those, what's the 10-meter target, right? The 10-meter target, we've got an issue right in front of us that we need to take care of. And it's not a bomb that's buried, a potential for an IED. The issue is we've got bullets getting thrown downrange. So we take care of that mission. We attack whatever's happening. We go through and do what we got to do. And then it's back to, to the other mission, right? Now that kind of depends. There's a bunch of different scenarios on what will or will not happen after that, but yeah, the mission completely changes. Now my mission is to make sure my dog doesn't get shot or go nuts or do anything like that, and then
protect yourself, protect your boys,
protect myself, protect my team, protect everybody. So
yeah, amazing. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, really. So I don't remember, wow, we went down a wild tangent here. That was fun.
Yeah, we did. It was great.
So I'm going to, that's the beauty about these, is it doesn't matter. Let's have some good conversation. So I'm going to go back and go down a different wild tangent. You said you had a song on the radio. What was the name of that song? First off. Oh, gracious. Really? You don't even remember the name of the song you had on the radio? Come on.
You know what's funny is, I don't remember. The blessing and the curse that I have is that I don't retain a bunch of stuff. Like I don't remember. I don't have tons of childhood memories. I don't hold on to grudges. I don't think about things over and over and over. But the bad news is, of course, like a moment like this where just recently, actually, my wife Stacey had shot me a Facebook post from 13 years ago that said listening to Nathan's song on the radio, and but yeah, I really don't remember.
Well, now I'm gonna have to Google it at some point. But
it was pretty cool, and actually that's how she and I met. I was playing out a lot at the time and teaching lessons and selling guitars at a really cool local guitar shop, and she came to this show, and they called it the Homegrown Buzz Show, and you get to play the show. They'd play your song on the radio, and so it was really cool. It's a pretty unique experience hearing your song on the radio.
Yeah, I bet. That's awesome.
Yeah.
As weird as it sounds, that every time I think of somebody hearing themselves on the radio for the first time, I think of the movie Selena. I don't know if you ever watched that, but I had 2 older sisters. So guess who watched that with their older sisters? This guy. But yeah, the celebration they have when they hear her on the radio for the first time. But one thing I definitely wanted to hit on to go back again is you mentioned that depression runs in the family, but not something that you have dealt with necessarily, right? And then you've mentioned a couple things since then. 1, you were bullied a lot. 2, you started getting into martial arts and fitness. And then 3, you don't really hold on to a lot of memories from the past. So initially when I heard that, I wanted to ask a couple questions about it, but you've opened up multiple different doors to that may lead to why you don't have to deal with depression very much, right? So I'd like to hear from your side of the house. Why is it you think that it runs in your family, but what is it that you do differently, or what is it that you've seen differently, or how do you react to things differently that maybe leads to you not having to deal with it as much?
Yeah, for sure. So I have a couple different answers on this, and also a recent experience too. I'd love to share. I don't know how you feel about it on your podcast, but are there any non-spaces that you want to go on the?
I only try to make it kid friendly. So
Okay.
depending on how, that's it. That's about it. And honestly, dealing with depression is something that we need to be able to talk to our kids about anyways. So let's see what happens.
Okay, cool. It's in the psychedelic world, if that
Okay.
helps.
Yep.
So from a young age, I have just always been positive. And I remember my dad scolding me about something, and I don't remember the actual thing, but I remember them telling me the story. And it's like, I said, well, just because I am in trouble doesn't mean I can't be happy. And so I've always just had a positive countenance, a positive thinking person.
Mm-hmm.
And I've also found things in life that I enjoy. And whether it was starting to, play piano and string bass from 5th grade, or, doing choirs and getting to travel a whole bunch. I also was very active in church, and it's changed a little bit for me for a number of reasons in the last few years, but I was a worship leader in largest United Methodist Church in the U.S. for multiple years, and in a couple other churches as well. And so I always found things to do, and to focus on, and to work on, and to strive for, and get better. And we put on live events as an 18, 17-year-old for, thousands of kids would show up. And so we were on this general youth council thing, and there's like a dozen kids, and we put on a friggin', huge youth events for thousands of people in these, in kind of the, whatever that city's, big event center was.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always looked for that leadership. I always looked for that opportunity to have an impact. And of course, now having done a DISC profile and a Enneagram and Myers-Briggs and DISC and predictive index, I now know I'm that high D driver in DISC. I'm a 99D, 99I. S and C are both super low. I'm a Maverick and PI. So I want to do stuff, and I'm going to figure it out. Yeah. And so I think that part, but I was also terribly afraid to be in a fight, or, I just wanted to be friends and get along with the other people. And so that was kind of the rub for me on the, getting bullied, is like, can't we just be friends? I just want to be nice, and you be nice, and we can both be nice together. And so that was the hardest part, I think. But I never dwelled on the negative. And I think people who deal with depression, they are willing to dwell and fester and suffer in that. And that is such a horrible place, in my opinion, to, operate from. And so, I hear this all the time from people say, like, well, I just have to, deal with the problem, which really, it's going to take time. And what I really feel that means is, like, I'm cool suffering in this thing instead of working on it, naming it, dealing with it, letting go of the emotion of it. And it's a very stoic thing for me to say, but, and not allow it to impact the next decade of my life because, something bad happened.
Yeah. I have a firm belief in that side of it as well. Like it's, if every time I've stuffed something down and said I could just deal with this, right, it's always turned out to be worse than when I just face it head on, deal with it. Like you said, name it, talk about it, put it out there. Like, don't let it own you. Own it. Don't let it own you. Right. Yeah. Realize that everybody's going to have problems. Right. But I was similar in the fact that I was always positive, very active. I grew up in church, the whole 9 yards, and I did not put on shows for thousands of kids, though. That's not something I did. I went to those shows with the other thousands of kids, but I never put it on. But so boy, I want to pull a little bit more on that string and kind of go through, because like there's one thing of just knowing not to focus on the negative, but if you're around people who are doing that a lot, right? And you said that that people in your family have been dealing with that. How did you pick that skill up, or was it just kind of who you have always been?
That's an interesting question. Well, I think from an earlier age, I definitely had a predisposition to being positive and a happy, genuinely happy. And even to this day, like I am not really, I won't say it as a negative. I'll say that I'm always looking for something fun to do and obsess about. And so, right now it's playing golf and it's building my company, and it's, but it's been playing guitar, or it's been running my tractor and chopping trees down and whatever. Like, it doesn't have to be something crazy, although I like doing crazy stuff too. Mm-hmm. But it's something, right? And when we have something to focus on this was the number one lesson. So as I got older, I started working on that self-development and that personal development and the psychology and these things, and realizing that whatever we focus on is what we create. So if you're going to focus on being upset and being wronged and life is so tough and this thing is so hard, that's all you're going to create. Mm-hmm. And if you don't do hard stuff, then you also don't inoculate yourself to experiences that are going to be difficult. Yeah. And so, if you're not doing those hard things and making yourself work through that and making yourself mentally stronger, for instance, like in high school, we had, a choir thing. We'd do Handel's Messiah, a whole section of this. And so in front of your whole high school and all your peers, for multiple years, I got to, sing a solo in front of, thousands of people in your own peers as a high school kid. And, and I would fully believe the same thing as, being on the football team and, going to play on a Friday night. And so you putting yourself out there, being in a situation that you're vulnerable, being in a situation that requires, I remember sitting at a piano in my first talent show, and you could hear the pounding of my foot from being so nervous that you could audibly hear the sound of that foot on the pedal. But there's no way to not be nervous in front of people without doing it. There's no way to, be able to work through hard problems without doing them. And so I fully have embraced that and worked on myself. And when the fear shows up or the frustration shows up, it's like, okay, well, hold on. Why? Like, what's causing that? And then dig back after that same feeling, that same thing.
Yeah, I think that goes back to what you talked about as well. Like we're going to do something that is not helpful for our kids, but being able to face it and go through it is what it is, right? Yeah. So, are you trying to expose your kids to hard things to be able to build that resilience in them as well? What are you doing to have that show up in your kids?
Absolutely. Well, so one of the things my kiddos do, they're both actually in ballet. And so Kansas City Ballet has this whole school that kids come from literally all over the country and train, and it's a feeder program into the actual ballet, like professional ballet. And so literally from age, I don't know, 5 or 6, my wife would be better on the number than me, but they've gotten to practice and perform in this school, and then they've performed both now on stage in front of thousands of people with the Kansas City Symphony, the Kansas City Ballet, and do the Nutcracker and other performances. And so not only are you with your peers, but you're literally you know, it's crazy even for me to think about, because, you know, people are paying, you know, $100 a ticket to go see the ballet for 3 weeks. And my kids are on stage every single night. You know, they have to practice, they have to perform, they have to make it, they have to audition. You have to show up and deal with the pressure of literally being under the lights, on stage, and doing something at a high level. And so, and we live on 12 acres, right? So like, hey, we want to have a campfire. Guess what, son? We're going to go cut some wood, and we're going to go, you know, haul it over here, and we're going to go, you do these things. And so, I have that expectation, but I also am learning. Like right now, I'm teaching my daughter to ride a bike. She's not wanted to do it, and we've kind of she had some bad experiences early on learning. And the first time trying to get her back on this bike and bike, I was getting frustrated, and I'm like, Nathan, you are not helping her at all, like at all. And you know, tears multiple times. And so we go out the second time, and I'm just like, the first time it's like, we're going to get this. This is this, you know, I'm like, okay, hold on. This is not working. So I'm like, okay, Grace, 10 minutes. I don't even care what we do. You're not going to complain. We're going to have fun. You're going to ride the bike. I'm not even letting go. Don't worry about it. And lo and behold, goes twice as good. She bikes for twice as long. She's still not super comfortable, but you know, it went a whole lot better when I relaxed.
Yeah.
So, and there's a lot of talking to your question. And yes, I want them to work on that.
Nice. Yeah. I think that exposing them to, again, those challenges and hard times is the only way to make it happen. Especially, you know, I talk to a lot of people that are successful, and it's like how some of the things that have made people successful is the hardships that they've gone through when they were younger. And how do we make sure that our kids go through hardships when they have it completely different than we ever did growing up, you know? And it's like, boy, what do I need to do? But we can create hardship in one way, shape, or form. So it doesn't need to be, being treated poorly or, having to get food stamps or anything like that. It doesn't have to be any of that, but there could certainly be hardship that we put our kids through and help them learn from. So, good on you.
And I think it's like, that's what life is. Life has things that are hard. And so we know as adults and business owners, and, whatever the job is, whatever the performance is, whatever the thing is, there's going to be hard stuff. Mm-hmm. And so, how can we make it normal for them and there's no way to do it other than doing hard stuff and talking about how it feels and how it's scary and working through it.
Yeah, completely agree. I think that, and I enjoy doing the hard things with them as well. So if I could find something to do with the kids that is difficult, I don't care if it's, for my 4-year-old going and climbing a tree. First off, I like climbing trees. I'm still a boy. In my heart, fun. I still, so they're a lot of fun. So as long as my back and my knees are letting me do it, I'm climbing that daggone tree. We're making this happen. So
I like,
but no, I think exposing them to that type of stuff is great. We've been, trying to go on as many adventures. My son really wants to go camping right now too, which I really want to drag him out there and do some like legit camping, and like, this is how to start a fire, and this is how to make your own food on the fire, and this is like this. We're going to go out and do some fun stuff. I think that's going to be part of homeschool this year. We're going to have a good camping trip for part of homeschool. But
that sounds epic. Well, funny enough, I didn't grow up doing this kind of stuff, camping and going out. I didn't grow up hunting. And I think that's been the other part of my mission as I gotten older. It was like, I want to be a Renaissance man. I want to know how to do all this stuff. I want to have all the skills, as best as I can. And so like in 3 weeks, I'm literally headed to the backcountry of, I guess maybe 6 weeks, backcountry of Idaho. And they literally bush plane you in. It's probably nothing compared to being in the military, but bush plane you in, you hop on a horse, and you literally ride for 6 hours to camp. And for the next 7 days, you're in the backcountry, horseback, elk hunting. So,
that would be so awesome.
I live for that stuff.
Yeah, that would be phenomenal. I would really enjoy the heck out of that. That'd be great.
Yes.
I've never been, I always grew up wanting to hunt and wanting to do all that stuff, and I literally have never done that. But that has always been one of my things. Like, we were out in Montana last summer, and just walking around the mountains of Montana, looking around and seeing all the animals and seeing all this stuff. I'm like, man, I love being out in those areas. And it was a mastermind that I'm in, GoBundance, that's there's a family portion of it called Fambundance, and we were out there, and like they were teaching the kids how to light fires and like what it is about some certain survival things and having fun, and it was just, golly, I love it. Like I just love to be around all of that stuff. And now I'm in Florida, so that's not like I'm gonna have to drag my kids to go get any mountains or hills or anything besides sea level. But man, that sounds awesome. I'm gonna have to look into that.
I share the same affinity for Montana too. Montana, Utah, Idaho. I mean,
gorgeous. That
whole mountain, there's nothing, when they call it Big Sky, Montana, there's a reason. Mm-hmm. It's amazing.
And that's where we were. Yeah. Have you, do you snowboard, ski, anything like that?
So I ski, I skied quite a bit in like high school and early college. And then I actually 2 years ago went and skied. And last year, Adam, for the first time, I own my own skis now and have an epic pass for this season. So nice. My goal with my son, we'll do a few days as a family. My wife and daughter are not so excited about this, but my goal is to ski like 15 or 20 days at least this season.
Nice. Yeah.
How about you?
Yes, I snowboard, and I've tried. I first learned to ski, and I was in like, I don't know, 6th grade or something like that. This was before really snowboarding was a thing. You know. So I did some skiing then, and then I learned how to snowboard later on, and then I just kind of stuck with that. I loved snowboarding, and then my knees started to have a harder time with snowboarding, so then I tried skiing again, and so I do a little bit of both. It depends on how I'm feeling that day, right? But man, we went out to Park City, and that is such a beautiful place to go snowboard.
That is literally where we skied multiple times this season as well. Same.
It is. Park City. I mean, I've been out to Tahoe, I've been to Park City, I've been out to Montana. I've been out a bunch of different places, and Park City was one of my favorites just because, like, A, it's close to the airport, which is great. B, like, you're just like snowboarding through all these beautiful houses. You're going underneath cars as they're driving over you. Like, it's just such a beautiful layout. It's so much fun. I had a great time. But that was one of those things that teaching the boys. Yeah, definitely amazing. But teaching the boys and soon to be obviously the little lady. Like it's the same thing I've taught them with dirt biking, right? You are going to get hurt, but I do not want you to stop at the painful part, right? You need to stop at the successful part. So with snowboarding, you're not going to stop because of a crash. I mean, obviously there are some crashes you just got to stop from, right? If you snap your leg in half, we're not going to go, well, buddy, you got to get back on, and you're going to end on a non-painful spot because that's just going to get worse, right? But within reason, we're not stopping at a painful moment. We're stopping at a joyful moment. When you got back on and you went back down a little bit more, I don't care if there's still tears in your eyes, you're going to go down a little bit more because I want you to feel that success behind you and don't have the last bit be there. So I think we were in Tahoe. And I was trying to teach. No, we were in Japan. So we were out in Nagano, Japan. And I'm trying to teach Adam. He's 4 years old on a little Batman snowboard, and I'm trying to teach him how to snowboard. And I've never taught anybody how to snowboard. I'm by far not an expert, but here I am trying to teach a 4-year-old how to snowboard on a Batman snowboard. Which is awesome. If
you're going to learn, you might as well learn on a Batman snowboard.
I know, and it's made by Burton, so it's built just for little kids. It's a Burton snowboard with Batman on it, and it's phenomenal. And now it's going to be his little brother's, but he's just going to town, having a great time, and then he is not having a great time suddenly. Like, he is angry. He is not happy. He keeps crashing. He can't stay up. I've got like this little rope thing I'm trying to use, and that's failing us miserably. It's getting all tangled up and tripping up both of us, and I'm getting angry. And I was like, boy, I am not showing up well right now for this situation. And but man, we did the same thing. Like, nope, we're gonna get a good run in, and then we can call it quits from there. So we got a good run in, and then he was like, I'm not done. We're going to keep going. So then we just kept going and going and going. And I mean, it was at a point where they didn't really have a bunny hill, but I would just keep walking up the hill and just let him go and have him go down, and then walk him up the hill and let him go and have him go down. He was just loving life.
Loving it.
But man, he wanted to quit so bad. But and so did I. Don't get me wrong. I really wanted to. I was mad, but you know, it is what it is. He had a great time. He still loves to snowboard. He's been trying to skiing as well. But man, it was I love it. I think it's so much fun. Puts me out in the mountains, gets me outside, having fun with the kids. Totally.
100%. Me too.
So I'm going to ask a couple business type questions here. I want to go down that route. So you do a bunch of real estate stuff. How did you go from playing in bands, being a worship leader for the church, to, hey, now I own multiple businesses. I've got a bunch of flips. I'm doing all this business stuff. How did all that kind of come about?
Well, I think from a high level, it goes from that same person who's driven and wants to figure stuff out, to just like, throwing myself into doing it, which is what I've done, with everything in my life. I heard, the Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I remember there being like commercials on the radio, reading the book, going to like the first, level of meeting and hearing some guy talk about making a bunch of money and, all those things. And then, buying my first sets of homes, going through bankruptcy in 2009 after having not done a good job, trying to figure out my way back, and going back through buying my first property in 2012. And, 2015, I somehow end up on Bigger Pockets after doing a handful of deals and become friends with Brandon. And, which kind of explodes the doors off my business again. And I grow and scale this company where we make the Inc. 5000 list, and we're doing tens of millions a year. And then all of a sudden realize this isn't what I want it to look like either. Mm-hmm. And so, from August of 21, really to today, or certainly the beginning of the year, 23, really morphing that thing from this big giant business, back down to something much, much smaller. And so it's been a really interesting journey, and I didn't want to just give you the pat answer. I think people get into real estate and they think they just want to go, own a bunch of rentals or own, a bunch of apartments, and they miss all the minutia in between. That is like, appraisal didn't come in right, or the contractor, took forever, or the bank said no, or gosh, you need to bring $100,000 to close this in 3 weeks, or, your house just got lit on fire and you had a $160,000 rehab that you just did that, it's gone, and you're going to have to redo it again. And so, I've really changed what I want out of it over the course of that, but it was the Rich Dad Poor Dad story from the beginning.
No, I went through a change in my desires on the real estate side. So I'm curious to hear how you got to that, right? You're doing tons of deals. And then how did you get to the point where you just said, man, I need to. So for me, I think a constant assessment of what we're doing needs to be happening, right? Constantly being aware of our why. Is our why still the same as it was? Like, are we still chasing the same things? Do we need to adjust what we're chasing? All the stuff, right? So what was your process like to go, okay, we're doing all of this stuff. I'm having successes. Yes, I'm having struggles. Yes, the property is burning down. Yes, these things happen inside of this. But what was it that kind of made you go, no, I really need to, start morphing this into that smaller version, instead of continuing to chase what you were chasing? Yeah.
Well, I'll also, one caveat to that is I recognize I always feel drawn to solve some mission, which sounds like a very military thing to say, but I am more fulfilled with a big problem to solve. And so what I realized was we built this big company, but I wasn't loving it anymore. I wasn't enjoying what I was doing. And we built so big that we had to do so many deals and, multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars a month to just break even and cover your overhead is not a fun place to be. And so, it's like, all right, this cannot be the thing that I spent all my time on to build. and I don't, I have a lot of free time, but I'm not making the money that I wanted to make. And I have this headache of this giant overhead. And so I remember the day distinctly that we fired half our staff basically in 2 days. And I am a lover of people, and like sat there in tears, like, conversation after conversation. He's like, you've been on this journey to help us build this company, but ultimately what we built isn't what I wanted to build. And so we have to make a change. And so now I want to do bigger deals that have take less people. I've really focused on joint ventures, and we've made way more money doing way fewer deals. Mm-hmm. And it's just made such an impact, and have more mental space to do more, have more time with your family and do more fun stuff than being stuck and stressed. But the truth is there's seasons to all of these things too. So you can't have one without the other.
Yeah, I love that. The seasons things is definitely true, but I think that we can drag ourselves through a season, even though it shouldn't be that time, right? And it's that assessment to make sure that you are going down the right path. Recently, I was listening to Ryan Pineda talk about something, and he was talking about how we'll tell ourselves, "Oh, we're doing this for our family. We're doing this for our family. We're doing this for our family," but then we're gone, 14 hours a day. Are you really doing it for your family, or are you doing it because you're telling yourself and for me, it's unbelievably important to be with the family, and chasing that down has made me adjust my goals, my dreams, my thoughts unbelievably, right? If you would have asked me 5 years ago that, hey, are you ever going to homeschool so that you can do that? Not a chance. I need to have that time so that I can, start chasing more apartments and start doing this more with the business and start to but ultimately it comes down to what is more important in my life, and more important things in my life: God, wife, child, or children in my case, right? So God, wife, and children. So I need to be able to be there for them. And it's not making millions of dollars or all the stuff, sure, that's going to come, and that's great. And we're going to be able to be successful in business. But if I'm successful in business, but I've lost my family, then was I really successful? No. There's no point in it.
It's like that moment in the Iron Man movie when Tony Stark's about to get out of the cave, and he's built that big giant thing, and the guy who helped save his life, says, like, Tony Stark, a man that has everything and a man that has nothing. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to be that person. There's no level of success or money that equals that. And I think sometimes it's hard in the moment, aspirationally, for us to be honest with ourselves, mm-hmm. where the aspiration is versus where the, filling time and space for yourself versus actually honoring that desire to have all the time with your family. I know I struggle with that for sure.
Yeah, I think it's, I think everybody that I've talked to on this podcast has struggled with something like that, right? Because we all want to drive for success, and we all want to be good dads. So it's like, how do we? And when I'm talking to people before the podcast, prepping for this, let's chat about how you kind of balance that. And it's such a misnomer, like balancing. Like there's no such thing as balance when you're talking about, doing all this stuff. But, it's how do we make sure that we're not screwing our kids up? How do we make sure that we're showing up for our kids? For me, part of showing up for our kids is still, as a Christian, somebody who believes that I'm the leader of the family, I do need to go and support them. I do need to have a job and bring in the income and do all the stuff. But I still need to be a present dad that teaches them and guides them and shows them what it's like to, be a present father. So, man, finding that balance has been, again, a misnomer, not something that I've been able to fully jump on. But
there's a term that I like. I can't remember who I heard it from. I think maybe my coach, Gary Harper, but it's a managed tension. Like it's not, there's no balance. The balance doesn't exist in this way, I don't think. And that's why I like to think about it in seasons, and working very hard for a quarter or for 6 months and saying, like, hey, are we all in on this? Is this what we're solving? And to also say, okay, well, what is the time worth that we're giving up here? But then also, what are we doing in return after that time. So
Mm-hmm.
we have that hustle season, but then we're going to do something fun, and we're going to spend some more time doing something else, and make sure that, here's the other thing too, is that 10 years ago, I didn't appreciate now what I appreciate, what it looks like to have great people who work in your organization. And so now, and not that I didn't appreciate them, but I didn't really appreciate them, if that makes sense. And also having a better understanding of how to delegate. And I think as a business person, if you're thinking about building any sort of business, real estate or otherwise, there's a great book called Who Not How. And you think about who are the who's that we need to have. It sounds like a children's book, but who are the who's?
The who's in Whoville. Yes.
The who's in Whoville. Who do we need to have around us? And so as I have gone through kind of this third iteration of business and life, I have found, people with more closely related core values that have the drive that I have, but that also have a very diverse set of skills. And rather than, hoarding money, like finding ways to say, how can I actually help you make more money than anybody who worked for me before, but also in return, you hold a higher level of responsibility. And so, it's one of those moments that we can recognize we can't have all the things. We can't have the control and the money and the business and the time and the whatever. So it's like, okay, well, let's be specific what it is that we actually want, and then we can actually create it.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And to me, who not how, if somebody was listening and did not write that down, write that down. I love that book, right? And I mean,
Me too.
It's one of those that you could apply in your personal life, you could apply in your business life, you could apply in any number of places. Who not how makes perfect sense, right?
Yeah.
But one thing you mentioned, and I'm trying to, I wrote it down. Hustle season. I wrote it down for a reason, right? When you're having one of those seasons of hustle, right? What kind of conversation do you have with the kids, with the family, to be able to say, hey, this is a time where I need to buckle down and do this types of thing? How do you have those conversations, or how do you prepare the family for that hustle season? Because we all know it's going to be a little painful for everybody. So how do you approach that with the family?
Yeah, I think, and so we homeschool also. And when I say we, I mean mainly she, my wife. Her 3 undergrads and a master's of technology and education really did add some level of, skill and ability in that department. Understatement of the year. So, and so I would say 5 or 6 years ago, 7 years ago, we were, well pre-COVID homeschoolers. And so my kids have never been in public school. My son almost 13, daughter almost 10. And so we were built already as a family unit to, I work from home, we homeschool from home. But it was more about now, hey, we need to make sure that these things now, because dad's business has changed and I have to put this focus on, this is what the time looks like, this is what the commitment, but my commitment also to you guys is, how can I help, whether it's, in time of running kids to practice or whatever it is, or keeping that commitment of date nights with my wife or my kids. And also working from home is a blessing too. It's such a huge blessing because, 10 o'clock in the morning, like one of my kids rolls in with a, cup of tea. I don't drink coffee, but cup of tea or whatever. And you get to hug them, or my daughter will sit, you can't see, but there's all these perler beads that are at my table right over here. And so, she'll be in here, we'll be hanging out, and I'll be working and she'll be working. And and it's also just finding the joy in the moments too. So I think a lot of times it's not just not being present for longer periods, but the harder thing for me is, oh gosh, I just worked 12 hours today, but now am I going to be an engaged father in the time I do have? And making sure that is so. The other piece that's changed too is we're in the process right now actually of hiring somebody in to help in our household, which sounds pretty crazy, but to help do grocery shopping, to help clean the house, to help, who also happens to be an absolutely insanely amazing chef. And so we took the decision of saying, all right, well, we're going to actually spend some money on someone who's going to save some time. And frankly, I think we'll save cost in groceries when, flying to the grocery store and trying to do stuff versus somebody who's focused on who, not how, loves to cook, loves to help, wants to support. And so how do I also, in the season of hustle, not just add stress to my wife and add stress to my kids, but how do I, take away some of that as well?
Awesome. And I think that I heard somebody recently talking about we do what we can to do a who not how for a lot of our business stuff and what we're doing. When was the last time we thought about that for our wife? How can we replace something? Like maybe it's bringing in a cook, maybe it's bringing in that person to clean the house more often. Maybe whatever it is. Like how can we put a who in our wife's life, so that they don't have to figure out how to do it, right? Like my wife is still military. Like there's a lot of she would love to be able to do a lot of this stuff. There's no way, like when she works, 10 hours a day and then she wants to still be a mom. So I've got to figure something out. So we have somebody come and clean the house. Like there's I need to have a wife, and I would like to have her. I'd like to have her present once in a while. I enjoy her company. But yeah, I think that's super wise. And I think that, so the hustle season for me has always been a struggle because I keep balancing in my head, because I know we're going to have hustle seasons, and I know I need to be able to do those. But I have such this struggle of the reasons I left the military. I want to always be there as much as I can. So if it's a hustle season, how do I really balance that desire to always want to be there with my kids as much as humanly possible, have them in this room all the time? I mean, they've shown up if you're watching on video, they've shown up like 50 times since we've been recording. Sometimes I've muted it so that you can't hear them, sometimes not. But I always want that. But there are times where I can't have that because I need to be so focused on what's going on and try to engage more and try to do all this stuff. And it's just, man, it's difficult. I don't know. I don't know if there's a question in there or not. It's just it's been something I've been struggling with myself on that front.
I think when your kids are a little younger than mine, so I think that has a different feeling to it too, because it's hard to tell your 4-year-old like, hey, I'm trying to work on this project.
Yeah.
Can I tell you about it? I need to put a little focus time. And instead, for me now, it's more of having an honest conversation. And it was funny. I start every day, by the way, with I go for a walk. I have written gratitude, written focus for the day, and I track everything every day too. So I'm very intentional with every part of my life. But I'm walking with my daughter, and I'm like, I ask her, "Hey, Grace, where can I do better?" So I just ask her, randomly on a walk, and she's kind of perplexed. She's like, "Well." I'm like, no, seriously. Like, I want an answer. I want a real answer. And she said, you work too much. And I said, okay, well, tell me what it would look like. Like, what does it look like to not work as much to you? Mm-hmm. Because that's the other thing too, is having that present time. Like, she is super happy. And as soon as we get off this podcast, by the way, she's literally, it's daddy daughter. We're hanging out. Nice. So, she is just as happy, literally cuddled up on the couch, watching a movie or something. It doesn't have to be any sort of thing. It doesn't have to be at cost. And so I think it's really recognizing what is the thing that they, wife, kids, whatever, are actually asking for. Mm-hmm. And then how do we actually serve that versus this feeling of like, gosh, I need to, insert this amount of time or this sort of thing or whatever. It's like, instead now I just I'm going to ask what actually makes a difference? What mm-hmm. do you need from me? And how can I better serve you as your dad, as your husband, whatever?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. With my oldest, I've tried that question and he's 8. So it is a little bit more difficult to pull that type of thing out on what I can do better. because there's also that piece of him that just wants to please dad, and it's always, no, dad, you're an amazing father, you know.
Of course.
Like, yeah. Well, I mean, obviously I am. I mean, let's be honest.
Obviously,
But tell me where, you know, if you had to be picky about it, you know, where would you, you know? And that tends to be the common theme is, you know, working, you know, and it's like, well, do you like living in a house? You know,
I know.
Do you like having air conditioning? Like
running water?
You know,
I think the other way we can ask those questions, and even with a younger kid, is like, when do you feel most loved with your dad? Like, when do you feel most loved? Or what is the most fun thing you can remember us doing together? Or, you know, if you could do something every day with me or us together, you know, what would that be? And so I love structuring those questions and the things we learn from psychology and you know, coaching and sales. And, you know, there's another great book, Never Split the Difference. Everyone should read that book. It is a brilliant book. Is we take those same tools and we apply them, like actually apply them to your life. So I really try very consciously to do that.
So applying them to your life. So I have been recently going down a path, like I've read, like, I don't know, a ton of books, a couple hundred books, right? And recently just saw something where it was like, instead of reading 1,000 books, read 100 books 10 times, right? You know, and it's like, okay, well, I'm already past that 100 books. Which ones do I need to go back and listen to? And then I've also been struggling on the implementation of a lot of this stuff, and I'm trying to, like, balance my calendar, balance my everything that I'm doing, and try to, like, be much more. I know I can be more efficient than I am. I'm struggling with some efficiency at the moment. And part of it is like, okay, well, you've listened to all these books and you know all of this stuff, but what are you doing to implement it? So what has been your way to implement those things that you've listened in the books, whether it's inside your family, inside your business, whatever it is? How have you started to implement a lot of those things that you're listening to or reading, I should say?
So I average probably a book or two a week. And I really focus on, okay, there's a couple of things. So first of all, I walk every morning. So if you hear that, it's like, okay, well, how are you reading a book a week? Well, I average between, you know, on average 3 to 5 miles per each morning. You know, so I can do, you know, about an hour and 10 minutes. I can walk, you know, 3 3/4 miles. And so you figure at 1.5 speed, 1 3/4 speed, I'm literally listening to a full book on average in, you know, 3, 4, 5 days. And I realized that, and by the way, I am also going through all my favorite books that made the biggest impact for me right now. So I'm going through all of them, even sometimes 2 or 3 times. So recently I've read $100 Million Offers, $100 Million Leads, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, or no, not Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Profit First, Never Split the Difference, Traction, Psychology of Money. I'm listening to that one right now. And I just try to take away one thing. Just take away one thing. And for me now, especially, and by the way, I have 191 titles in my Audible, so I was curious. And I know people talk about, you know, having a physical book versus a, you know, Audible book or whatever. And a lot of times, if it's something I'm really working on, I will listen to Audible while I read the book. So I'm that weirdo. But I think that the book part is just simply taking away one thing. So for instance, in Traction, I have 2 new director of operations, one on my coaching side and one on my real estate side. And the one thing that I wanted to walk away was, when the last time I implemented Traction and the last time I did this in my business, what was my biggest pain point and how can I do it better? In my one pain point, the biggest pain point was, how do I get the information that's in this thick skull of mine into somebody else's the fastest, most efficient, most simply, most eloquently, most best in the least amount of time? And that question has led for me to also then serve my students on my coaching side better too, because if I'm better on my real estate side and how we operate and how I teach that to my people, then I can take that same thing to my students, right? And so that is a beautiful thing. On the anything you want to talk about in that?
Yes. So one thing I want to mention to you, have you hired an implementer at all for implementing EOS?
So funny enough, I have both hired an implementer and I have also been paid to do that in multiple organizations and multiple businesses all over the country. So I've done it.
And you still struggle to get it from here to somebody else?
100%. Because you know what? It's so different when it is somebody else than it is when it's you.
And I think that's why I like bringing in an implementer was one of those things that when we did that with ADPI, it really helped us get a lot of the clarity on putting that stuff down. Was it probably the fastest? I would say in a way, yes, because while it did take more time, you're doing multiple 8-hour meetings, you're trying to get all this knocked out. But it would have probably taken us 8 months to try to get all of that stuff done to give to all of our people to go through the thing, when it was like, okay, well, let's do a couple 8-hour meetings with an implementer to get this knocked out. So,
right. Well, and the other thing on the implementation side too is, I'm not so structured to believe that I need to have every single thing that, by the way, Traction is literally sitting on my desk right here. So I can literally see the book as I
got my binder right here. Yeah.
That's hilarious. So it's literally right there. And by the way, I got to give a shout out to my man, Alex. So his $100 million dude, what a monster. So the implementation piece that I also realized was like, all right, well, what's the 80%? What's the 80-20 of this giant book in the implementation of this? Like, where do we need this the most? And how do we make it, again, simple? Like, how do we make it simple? How do we make it really understandable? And then the second piece, and I heard you talking about this, and I could feel that like pain or frustration. Like, what do I do at the time, and how do I actually make it? So if you could see over here, I have a giant 4x8 whiteboard, and it has all the different businesses and high points of stuff that I'm working on. And then we have this, within those businesses, obviously in Traction, we have quarterly goals and rocks and stuff that we're working on. But then literally every day, I start the day with gratitude and focus. And I only put 3 things, no more than 3 things typically under that focus. And recognizing like, okay, what's causing the most pain? What is the biggest challenge? And if you don't make it clear what's the most important, you're not going to know. You're not going to get the things done and have that feeling of overwhelm or frustration or whatever that is that's showing up. So, that has been a absolute game changer. 3 things of gratitude, 3 things of focus. That's it. Get through three things done. And by the way, if that goes on the sheet, it better get done. Like, there's very seldom a day that those 3 things, and there might sneak in 4 that don't get done.
Yeah, that's one thing that I've been wanting. That's probably not the right term to use, but that I've debated doing, because I don't like journaling. I say I don't like journaling as somebody who's never really given it the actual effort. I gave it the old college try, but I haven't given it the actual effort to make sure that I'm actually doing what it needs to do. Because I hear nothing but everybody I know who journals loves journaling and feels very successful doing it, and that it makes sense.
Well, the other thing about this is, by the way, this isn't anything fancy on Etsy. It's a college bound notebook. And the other thing about it is, I had, notes in Evernote, and I had notes in, Apple and whatever. But literally, if you look here, there's some pages that, go a couple days. But again, it's not like I'm not making some journal, I'm not Dear Diary, Today was so hard. It's literally the long weekend was wonderful. Excited to be clear in the monthly financial targets. Starting and keeping my morning routine has been a game changer. Like just start with something and then the focus is like as specific or big or small or whatever as they are. So you don't have to make it something that's huge and daunting. Yeah. It can literally be 3 things you're grateful for, 3 things you're focused on, 1 thing you're focused on.
All right. I need to add that to my stuff. I'm going to give that to my accountability group and tell them to hold me accountable on that. I need to start doing that too.
I love it. And by the way, then what you're going to do is you can get the Done app. Let me see if I'm in the focus. And so then you can track. So I have in mine, I have morning walk, read 10 pages, 10 minutes, vitamins, written gratitude, 150 grams of protein, drink water, floss. I track if I drink booze or not, by the way, which I gave myself accountability for, and push-ups, put like a little 5-minute workout routine. So every day I'm at least walking 3-4 miles, doing a little workout, drinking water, gallon of water, 150 grams of protein.
Nice.
Just check it.
Boy, don't challenge me too much here. All right, gracious.
What's causing? Where's the friction? So this is my favorite question. Where does the friction show up?
The friction always shows up in now I'm adding something else to my things to do. But really, what I'm doing is clarifying the things that I need to do and putting them in order, right, and making sure that I'm getting the things that are necessary to do, as opposed to just filling the time with things that I know I need. Like I've got a to-do list that's a mile long, and it's like, okay, well, I either get 3 very important things done, or I start checking off all the nonsense that's on my to-do list. So I think that it's just, okay, well, now I need to implement something else to do something. And that's where my friction is, I think. Well,
this is a podcast on books, I guess. So Atomic Habits, James Clear.
Yeah, it's a great one.
You know, so my one thing from that book, and I talk about it all the time, which is the habit stacking. So guess what? My habit stack, I get out of bed, I brush my teeth, I put my shoes on, I go outside, boom, I'm on a walk. That's number 1. While I'm on a walk, I'm outside, I'm listening to a book, and boom, now number 2, I get in the house, I take my vitamins, I start water, boom, now I've hit 4. I walk downstairs, I write my gratitude and my focus for the day, get in the shower, boom, now I'm literally knock out my push-ups. I'm halfway through the 10 or 12 items or whatever within an hour?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
And then you're not like getting into your day halfway without something written for the focus for that day. You're literally starting the day because you just spent 20, 30 minutes, an hour going for a walk and having a clear head.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah. And that's one of the things in my accountability group, they were telling me, like the atomic habit stacking for sure. Like, you know, and so we just yesterday said that we were all going to do 100 push-ups a day. Not 700 push-ups in a week, 100 push-ups a day, that every one of us are challenging each other to. We're going to have to, like, it's because we did a certain amount in a week, and then 2 of us would be, that right before we get on the call, we're like knocking out 500 push-ups because we had to catch up. And it was like, no. 100 push-ups a daggum day. And again, it's not about the push-ups. 100 push-ups a day is not going to make me, unbelievable. But getting myself into that habit, doing the thing consistently, is what I need to train myself to do. And that's the problem that I've had with journaling and all that, is I don't stay consistent with it, because I'm like, I'll wake up one morning and I'm like, well, this is dumb. And then I have a hard time going past the this is dumb stage. And it's like, no, like, it's not dumb. You just don't want to do it because you're not used to doing it yet. Make it a habit. Get used to doing it. Yeah. Right.
Well, and then also the key in there is what is causing the friction. So I'll give you an example on the push-ups. So I don't know if you know a guy named Rich Fetke. He and his wife Kathy are amazing investors and people. They live in Malibu, and they built an amazing business. But by far, amazing people. I love them dearly. And so he's the one that introduced me to the Done app, and he said, and he's a big, thick dude, very fit. He's like, 10 push-ups. Like, I just do 10, because there were so many days that and I'm not saying you shouldn't do 100, but there's so many days that I used to say like 100 push-ups, and I do like 40. Well, I failed. but I did 40.
Yeah.
And so guess what? Mine says 10. Do 10. Guess what?
Yeah.
How many days do I do 10? Very few. Very few. How many days do I do push-ups? Pretty much every day. You know, pretty much every day. I am on day 45 in a row.
Nice.
So, and there's 40 days before that because I missed a handful of days in the hospital, no less.
That sucks.
But yeah, sepsis is no joke.
Ooh,
don't mess around with that.
No kidding. Yeah.
But it's a game changer. So wherever the resistance, here's the key. Wherever the resistance is, that is where you annihilate. Like, all right, resistance. I see you. I recognize you. What's the thing that's keeping me from actually making that step, making that decision?
Yeah, I like that. That's I'm going to take that. I'm going to take that and take that one on the chin for sure. Because I've how many times have I done this to myself, and I keep going back to the same thing. And I try to teach my kids about consistency. Well, I need to model consistency. I need to model how that looks. So I appreciate the challenge on that for sure, and the focus. And even more so, like the crazy part is we feel resistance in these things, but then once we actually have it running, we're like, why did I put that off so long? Yeah.
Like, because you're only actually doing yourself a disservice not having it in a flow that actually is working, because in truth, it's not working.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's and again, I'm only speaking from experience, not speaking it to you. So,
yeah. And it's funny because I feel resistance just talking about it, because I know that the second I talk about it and put it in the ether, that means I need to do something about it. And it's like, why? Like, I might as well not even talk about it because I don't want to have to go do something about it, And it's like, golly, that's so. Just mentioning it out loud is one of those things, And like multiple podcasts ago, I was talking about potentially doing homeschool, and that was one of those things that, boy, man, now I'm talking about wanting to do homeschool on a podcast. I'm putting it out there, so people are going to need to know, what am I doing? And I don't even know if I want to say this out loud because I don't know where it's going to go. And it's like, golly, I don't. It's tough, You trying to say hi to everybody up here? Say hi. Say hi.
No, Dad. I want to put this microphone in my mouth.
Yeah, I want to eat this microphone. Yeah. If you're only listening, you again need to go to the YouTube to see this face of just.
Yeah, there's a very cute kiddo.
Yeah,
but when you're that many months or years old, then that's your job. You're checking it out.
Yep. Just be cute and check it all out, huh?
That's right.
Yeah. All right. Well, what topics have we not? My daggum au pair back here giving me.
I know. First you had these, and then
I was watching her. Yep. You'd expect that out of the children, not out of the 20-year-old au pair. I tell you what. But what topics would you like to bring up? Because that's something I always want to ask at the. Okay, apparently the kids want to bring stuff up because now we're getting the party house in here again. Goodness gracious!
You got to have the party.
Yeah, apparently. You want to tell me something? Do you want to tell Mr. Nathan something? Just me? Well, right now you're telling everybody who's listening to this podcast something because we're recording.
Then, no.
Gracious. You see, this is the joys of working from home. I love it.
Yeah.
See?
Nailing it.
Yeah.
You got bunny ears, rabbit ears.
All the dishes.
You washed all the dishes?
Because the egg was too
Oh, egg was stuck on it. Well, good job washing all the dishes, buddy. I like it. All right. Can I finish talking to Mr. Nathan here, boys? You can leave little Diana because she's not, talking to everybody. But all right. Goodness. But no, I want to turn it over to you and kind of see what you want to chat about. You've obviously asked a few questions, but I'm sure there's something else that may be on your brain or anything that you want to pass along or share or anything.
What's your biggest takeaway so far, or challenge, or positive within homeschooling? Like what has changed for you, or what's become true that wasn't true before with that decision?
Boy, I think that I was very concerned for a few things. One, we've only been doing it for a few weeks, right? So I've got some time to really get into this and figure out what it is. But I think one of the biggest things is how much school has programmed our kids how quickly, right?
Yeah.
And what I can already see, because I think it was before we started recording, I was telling you about the homeschooling thing, and I can see how much like I need to. All the reading that I did beforehand, all the stuff that I was reading beforehand was like, hey, you're going to have to unschool your kid, right? You're going to have to get them used to not being in school because you're not trying to restructure your homeschool to look like school. You want homeschool to be what your child needs.
Yeah.
Wowzers. And I don't know if you heard that door slam, but
I definitely heard that one.
Yeah, that was very man. But so for me, it's been a lot of how I didn't realize just how much impact the school had on my kids until, especially the oldest one, until now. And now I'm realizing, wow, like every single mistake that he sees, every single thing that he's looking at is a hit on him personally. And it's like, man, no, not at all. Like this is, for me, it's weird because I am constantly in growth mode, constantly in trying to learn something, constantly trying to challenge. And I'm saying that right after telling myself that I didn't want to do one of these apps because I'm challenging myself, right?
Right.
But
that's different.
Yeah, exactly. That's very different. Very. Thank you for agreeing with me on that. Yeah. No tongue in cheek at all on that.
Not at all.
Not in the slightest. So I'd say that's probably the biggest thing that I'm seeing is and my kids have only been to private school, so I could not imagine what that would look like if they had gone to public school, on how even more programmed they would have been in multiple different directions. So
yeah, it's interesting because we chose from the beginning. Which again, I think I already mentioned this, but when COVID hit, I was so grateful. Work from home. We have 12 and a half acres. We have a big house. We have lots of space. We have a creek to play in and guns to shoot and things to do and a million things to do. And when we think about the structure of school, it is not conducive to learning.
Yeah.
Because you can't have, I was talking to my wife Stacy about this, and she was an elementary school teacher, and she remembered having one year where she had like 10 or 11 kids, which, imagine 10 or 11, unless you're, a good Catholic. My dad was a preacher, so you can get away with it, but good practicing Catholic or good Baptist, I think is what he said. You're probably not having 10 or 11 kids, homeschooling. But that was a small class. And the teacher now has 20 or 30 kids or more. How can you possibly do a good job for 30 kids? It doesn't make sense. There's a fancy $5 word called anathema, right? It's anathema. It does not make any sense. Yeah. And so for us, it's like, if your kid is having an absolutely awful day, like, all right, son, you're going to take a half an hour and you're going to go outside and you're going to jump on the trampoline.
Yeah.
And then you're going to come back in and we're going to make another go at it. Or, you know what? We're studying unicorns because Grace's favorite animal is a unicorn, which, by the way, is the country's animal of Scotland, which I learned this week.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. My parents were there. That's where their trip was. And my daughter now has a very floofy topped wool cap of the unicorn. Scotland's. Now you know something. Now you learned.
Yeah, I just learned something for sure.
So why not have fun with it? And guess what? How many people are going to a factory to go work, when they're 16? Not many.
But yet that's what we're teaching them to do in our school system. Yeah.
And all the tests and all the nonsense. So anyway, I could go on ad nauseum about this because it frustrates me to no end, which is why we made the choices that we did. And And I think the kids are better for it, and we as the adults are better for it too.
I'm looking forward to that comfort. Right now, of course, it's still fresh, it's still new. I know that I'm doing the right thing, but it's not comfortable yet. You know what I mean? Like there's still a lot of work to go through. We're about to go on the first trip. At the time we're recording this, about to go on the first trip that I'm including homeschool on. Right? We're going up to Philadelphia for some masterminding and whatnot. So I was like, man, we're going to go a few days early. We're going to go spend a few days in Philadelphia. I'm going to teach American history. You're going to see where the Declaration of Independence is. We're going to go check some stuff out and go to the Liberty Bell and learn about American history there, right? And then I look forward to when we're learning about World War II. Let's go on a trip to Poland.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
Let's do a field trip to Poland. As a family, and go check out what World War II actually was, and go walk through Auschwitz and go see where, the Panzers came up over the hill and talk about all of the stuff that was going on. And the experience that they get to have with that, I think is going to be like unbelievable. I really look forward to, like I said, I know I'm doing the right thing. It's just not comfortable yet.
Yeah. Well, and there's so many resources now too. When you think of, when we were kids, people are thought of like that they didn't have as much interaction or they weren't as sociable or whatever. And I truly believe it's actually the opposite, because you have interaction with adults, you have interaction with other kids, you have different, obviously everybody's different how they structure it, but our kids, they're so much more socialized than the 20 kids in their classroom or 30 kids in their classroom. And so, you
get to cater their environment. You get to, it's not just the luck of the draw on which 20 kids they're next to in class. You're like, no, like these are the types of people I want my kids around, and I am making sure that they're around those types of people, as opposed to just, well, I don't know what Susie's dad does at home. That is exposing Susie to whatever that is now next to my daughter. Like, I know that, but I do know who this person is that I go to church with, and these people that my kids are exposed to. And, we've got a huge homeschool network in this area where I'm at, and they've got their own sports teams. They've got their own, they have instructors for teaching various different things, and they've got all sorts of events they go to. And like, I'm looking at going to one of the Tampa Bay Lightning games in the near future with a bunch of homeschool. So they get exposed to all sorts of people and all sorts of things, like you were saying, and we get to kind of cater their environment to what I think is best for them, as opposed to what the school thinks is best for them. So
that's amazing.
You are making me feel better about this, because again, and everything that I read beforehand was like, you're going to feel like you're failing miserably for a little while. You're going to feel like your kids are going to be dumber because they're learning from you. You're going to feel like all this stuff. And sure enough, like it's there. And so I know that it's happening because that's just part of the process. But man, I look forward to the fact that the other two kids, so Rourke is starting kindergarten next year. He's kind of like doing some kindergarten stuff now, but he's not officially in kindergarten. So I look forward to the fact that he's not going to have to go to a normal school, and we get to really cater his upbringing to that. So, boy, that one question, we really start talking about a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it's a blessing, and also normal school, we get to change what normal means.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
And also, it's cool when you start to see your older kids helping the younger kids too, right?
Yeah.
And or maybe your younger kids actually better at something, and there's a cooperation, there's a that investment of relationship that you just don't get if you're in a school 8 or 9 or 10 hours or whatever it is a day, and so it's a huge blessing.
I was literally just talking about that with my partner Mark Young. We just had a same page meeting today with an EOS same page meeting. So he and I went out and hung out with each other for hours and hours today. But that was one of the things I brought up. It's like, my son was going to school 8.5 hours a day, and then he'd come home and he'd have an hour or two of homework. And I was like, he's putting in more hours than a normal adult at a W-2. Like, this doesn't make sense to me. It was flabbergasting. I was like, I can't do this. And then, it is a massive blessing to be able to do this and work from home and be able to look out this and watch the boys play around and have fun. They're playing with the puppy. They're, Adam's doing some math homework literally right now. He's just over there. He just took a break and now he's back to doing math. And it's like, golly, what a blessing this is to just. I'm enjoying the heck out of it. So
I'm glad, and I can't wait to hear in future adventures how it's going.
Yeah, we're gonna have to try to link up in one of those mountainous areas and get the families out snowboarding and actually get to hang out and do some homeschooling together and see some, like, I don't know. I think that would be a lot of fun to
it would be
to
a
do
blast.
something like that.
Yeah, it'd be awesome.
All right. Well, Nathan, I am extremely grateful that you came and hung out and chatted for a while. I would have never guessed that I'd be sitting here talking to you for almost 2 hours when we first met and going through all the stuff. But man, I love having these conversations. I never know where they're going to go. I never know what we're going to talk about. And you certainly did not disappoint. And I thank you so much for hanging out with me and sharing your wisdom. And I look forward to the next time we get to see each other in person again. But is there anything else that you wanna share last minute, or tell folks how they can get a hold of you if they want to reach out in one way, shape, or form?
Yeah, of course. Well, it's been a pleasure, and I be on a mountain anytime. It's one of my favorite places, favorite things. Carrying a rifle or not, hiking or hunting. I have a huge passion for both. And so to connect with me, I made it real easy. So LinkedIn, Facebook, all the socials are all the same at Nathan Brooks, REI. And if you are somebody who's trying to get after doing some real estate stuff, don't know where to start, we love helping people. It's a huge passion for me. So definitely reach out and love to help you. Buy that first rental, make that first flip. And above all, man, I want people to walk away from this conversation with two guys who aren't perfect. Well, I won't speak for you, but I'm not perfect. I'm not a perfect investor, not a perfect dad, not a perfect person, but I work at it every day. And the people that people look up to work on themselves, and they work on their craft, and they work on being a better dad and better husband. And don't be afraid of the work. Don't be afraid of the hard stuff, because that's where the learning, that's where the growth happens. And that's where the joy comes from, because without the hard stuff, we wouldn't know what the great, wonderful, joyful stuff is.
Yeah. Much agreed, man. That's phenomenal. Thank you so much again, Nathan. Greatly appreciated. I look forward to this one getting released. If you can stick around for a minute, I got a little bit more to chat with you about. But thank you, everybody, for listening. I greatly appreciate it. Please reach out to Nathan. I am 1,000% positive he can help you out in one way, shape, or form. So thank you very much, everybody.